The room went quiet, not the kind of quiet that comes after applause, but the kind that settles when something heavy has finally been said out loud. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs moved through the industry like gravity itself. Power, influence, a man whose name alone could open doors, end careers, and rewrite narratives. But today, the air feels different. The music has stopped, and the silence is loud, because now, the people who knew him are talking. Not bloggers, not internet trolls, not random critics chasing clicks. We're talking about Angie Martinez. We're talking about Charlemagne Tha God. Industry pillars, voices that don't speak unless something real is happening. And when Angie said she felt darkness around him, not rumors, not hearsay, but something she personally sensed, the room shifted. When Charlemagne admitted that even back then, something felt off, it wasn't gossip anymore. It was testimony. What makes this moment different is timing. For years, Diddy stood untouchable, surrounded by power, wealth, and yes, silence. But now, that silence is cracking, and what's leaking through isn't redemption, it's reflection. Behind the scenes, whispers grow louder, that he wants a comeback interview, that he wants to control the narrative, that he believes, somehow, the public can still be won. But here's the problem. The industry has changed, the audience has changed, and the people who once protected him aren't answering the phone. Angie Martinez didn't just say no to an interview. She said no to performative accountability, no to PR apologies, no to the old playbook. And when Charlemagne echoed that sentiment, something became clear. This isn't cancel culture. This isn't revenge. This is consequence. Because when the people who shared rooms with you, shared stages with you, shared history with you, start speaking carefully, cautiously, but honestly, that's when you know the story has shifted. And this time, it's not about headlines. It's about what happens when power fades, and the truth finally gets a microphone. They say every fallen king believes the crown is still within reach, and according to multiple industry whispers, Diddy believed that too. Behind closed doors, the plan was simple, familiar, even. A carefully curated comeback, a sit-down interview, a controlled narrative, a chance to talk his way back into relevance. But this time, the doors didn't open. What's being quietly discussed in media circles is this. Diddy allegedly began reaching out, not to critics, not to investigators, but to platforms he once ruled. Urban radio, legacy outlets, big names with cultural weight, the kind of spaces where, years ago, he could walk in unquestioned. And the response, silence, or worse, polite refusal, because the rules had changed. Networks didn't want a redemption arc. They didn't want tears on cue. They didn't want a polished version of regret with no accountability behind it. What they wanted, and what he reportedly refused, was real answers. That's where Angie Martinez enters the picture. When word surfaced that she had been approached for a possible conversation, people leaned in. Not because they expected fireworks, but because Angie doesn't play games. She doesn't do fluff. And she doesn't let guests rewrite history. And her response was telling. No accountability, no interview. No growth, no platform. That silence spoke louder than any headline. Because when someone like Angie, who knows the culture, knows the people, knows the stories, declines, it sends a message across the industry. This isn't something you can spin. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, another reality was setting in. The money wasn't flowing like it used to. The power wasn't unquestioned anymore. And the allies, they were suddenly busy. Sources say the frustration grew when even major networks reportedly refused unless they had full editorial control. No pre-approved questions. No image rehab. No tell my side special. That's when whispers began circulating about alternative platforms. Smaller outlets. Streaming networks willing to trade controversy for clicks. And that's when the humiliation truly set in, because for someone who once dictated culture, being reduced to begging for a microphone is its own kind of downfall. The irony. The same tactics that once built the empire, control, image, influence, were now the very things keeping him locked out. And while the public speculated, the industry understood something deeper. This wasn't about cancel culture. This wasn't about revenge. This was about a man realizing, too late. That power only works when people still believe in you, and belief was gone. Long before headlines. Long before lawsuits. Long before whispers became warnings. There were signs. Not the kind you can screenshot or timestamp, but the kind people feel in their bodies. That's what makes Angie Martinez's words so chilling. When she said she felt darkness around him, she wasn't describing an incident. She was describing a presence. A heaviness. Something that made you keep emotional distance even when logic told you everything was fine. And what makes her words hit harder? She wasn't alone. Charlemagne echoed it. Quietly. Carefully. The way someone does when they know exactly what they are saying, and why they are saying it now. He spoke about moments where Diddy seemed hollow. Restless. Unfulfilled. A man who had everything but peace. A man who, by his own admission, once said, "I've never been happy." That line matters. Because happiness isn't about money. Or fame. Or power. It's about alignment. And according to those who crossed paths with him privately, something was always off. The energy. The unpredictability. The emotional volatility. Not explosive, just unsettling. People noticed how he moved through rooms. How conversations shifted when he entered. How laughter felt forced instead of natural. Even when he tried to soften, attending church, speaking about growth, appearing emotional, those close enough to observe said it felt performative. Not fake, but incomplete. Like someone reaching for change without understanding how to hold it. And here's the part no one likes to say out loud. The industry knew, not everything. Not details. But enough to stay cautious. Enough to avoid the parties. Enough to keep interactions surface level. Enough to never fully trust. And that's why, when things finally began to unravel, there was no rush to defend him. No wave of powerful allies stepping forward. No coordinated campaign of support. Just distance, because people remember how they felt around you. And when enough people feel uneasy for long enough, eventually someone says it out loud. Angie did. Charlemagne did. And once that door opened, it couldn't be closed again. This wasn't about rumors anymore. It was about pattern recognition. And now, as the walls close in, the question isn't whether people believe the accusations. It's why so many of them weren't surprised. Power doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes. Quietly. Gradually. And usually, alone. What made Diddy untouchable for so long wasn't just money or fame, it was loyalty. The kind that comes from fear, opportunity, and proximity to greatness. The kind that keeps people quiet even when something doesn't feel right. But loyalty has a shelf life. And when the power shifts, it expires fast. That's what we're watching now. Because the most revealing part of this moment isn't who's speaking out, it's who isn't rushing to defend him. No long list of artists stepping forward. No industry-wide statements of support. No carefully worded, "we stand with him" messages. Just silence. And in Hollywood, silence is never accidental. People who once benefited from his influence are suddenly unavailable. Former collaborators stay vague. Old allies choose their words carefully, or not at all. Why? Because loyalty built on fear collapses the moment protection disappears. And insiders know something else too. Defending someone right now isn't brave, it's risky. The culture has shifted. Audiences don't accept vague denials anymore. They don't want polished apologies or spiritual language. They want accountability. They want truth. And they can tell when someone is avoiding both. That's why the reaction from Angie Martinez mattered so much. She didn't attack him. She didn't accuse him. She simply refused to play along. And that refusal said everything. Because when someone like Angie, who understands nuance, history, and complexity, draws a boundary, it signals that the situation has crossed from complicated to untenable. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the reality sets in, the calls aren't being returned. The invitations stop coming. The protection fades. And for someone who built an empire on influence, that kind of isolation is devastating. This is the moment many powerful figures never prepare for. The moment when admiration turns into distance. When silence becomes judgment. When people stop asking, how can we help? And start thinking, how far do we need to stand back? Because loyalty isn't tested when everything is going well. It's tested when standing beside someone costs you something, and right now, no one wants to pay that price. There's a moment in every downfall that feels different from the rest. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just exposed. It's the moment when control slips. And for someone who built an empire on image management, narrative control, and strategic silence, losing that grip is devastating. This is the phase insiders quietly call the scramble. Because when power fades, the instinct isn't reflection, it's recovery.